The Honorable the Deputy Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the Creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this House, here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen.
Oath or affirmation, announcements by the Speaker, bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
The Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Penal-Dabiq Regional Corporation for the year ended September 30, 2005. Numbers 2 to 3. The audited financial statements of Caroni 1975 Limited for the years ended June 30th, 2014 and 2015. 4 to 5. The audited financial statements of Lake Asphalt of Trinidad and Tobago 1978 Limited for the years ended September 30th, 2009 and 2010. 6. The consolidated audited financial statements of the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the financial year ended December 31st, 2008. 7. The audited financial statements of Caribbean New Media Group Limited for the year ended December 31st, 2014. So, Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and papers 2 to 7 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Honorable members, the question is that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and papers 2 to 7 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. The ayes have it.
Reports from committees.
Honorable Member for San Fernando West.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I wish to present the following report, standing in my name. The 4th interim report of the Joint Select Committee, appointed to consider and report on the Whistleblower Protection Bill 2015.
Prime Minister's question.
Having presented that report, may I beg to move that the committee be allowed an extension of 13 weeks in order to complete its work and submit a final report by the 9th of September 2016.
We will deal with that at the appropriate stage, please.
Prime Minister's questions.
Chaguanas West, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question to the Honorable Prime Minister. Could the Prime Minister state whether his security detail, traditionally made up of special branch personnel, has been replaced by soldiers of the Special Forces Unit attached to the Defence Force?
Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as a public official who conducts public business, and is exposed to the elements and being afforded the protection of the state's agencies. I am not prepared in this arrangement to discuss any security afforded to me or to any other public official or any citizen for the benefit of their own security. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member Urupuchis.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Prime Minister. Is the Prime Minister therefore saying that he will not answer the question whether or not his security detail is still comprised of special branch officers?
Mr. Speaker, the language of Parliament is English. And I just spoke in English and I speak again on this particular matter. That with respect to the personal security arrangements afforded to me or to any other person in the city, in the country, particularly a public official, exposed to the elements, this is not the appropriate way, and I will not engage in stripping away anybody's security in Trinidad and Tobago.
Honourable Member for Princestown.
Mr. Speaker, through you to the Honourable Prime Minister, could the Prime Minister indicate the total cost, inclusive of the full delegation, of his recent trip to Ghana?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there are two questions here to me. One number 2 and one number 17. I've got an answer which I believe might not be correct. And so that as not to provide incorrect information to the Parliament, I would like not to answer this particular question. Number 17 includes the same question, which I am convinced is correct. So I can answer this in number 17.
Supplemental? Well, there isn't any supplemental as a result. Question 3. No, he said that, okay, remember, question 17 includes the Ghana trip. So everything will be inclusive in question 17. So we'll take it at that stage, honourable members. So we'll now move on to question number 3, which is also Princestown, honourable member.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Honourable Prime Minister, could the Prime Minister state the names and designations of the delegation of his recent trip to Ghana?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Deputy Speaker, happily so. The delegation to Ghana was headed by myself as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. I was accompanied by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Senator the Honourable Dennis Moses, Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. We were joined along the way by the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. We were joined in London on the way to Ghana by the Minister in the Office of the Attorney General and Minister in the Prime Minister's Office. I was accompanied by Professor Ken Julian, Advisor to the Prime Minister on Energy, Mr. Jerry Brooks, Chairman of National Gas Company, Mr. Andrew Jupiter, Chairman of Petrotrin, Mr. Selwyn Lashley, Permanent Secretary, Ministry in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries.
Yes.
Permanent Secretary, yeah.
Supplemental question, honourable member Princestown.
Honourable Prime Minister,
there were some other officials who accompanied the delegation. The Press Secretary to the Prime Minister, Mrs. Arlene Gorin-George, the Protocol Officer to the Prime Minister, Mr. Bruce Lai, a videographer, a photographer, and 2 security officers.
Thank you, honourable member. Honourable Princestown.
Honourable Prime Minister, having indicated that Professor Ken Julian is the advisor on energy affairs to the Prime Minister, is the Prime Minister prepared to indicate the remuneration package for Professor Julian, as well as if he can also indicate to us the date of assumption for Professor Ken Julian serving as an advisor to the Prime Minister on energy affairs?
Honourable member, the Yes, Professor Ken Julian was mentioned, but you're taking it down a different trend in terms of your questioning. The remuneration part, and then also with regards to the special advisor. So I will not entertain those two questions at this time. Honorable Member for Princestown again. Question number 4.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Honourable Prime Minister, could the Prime Minister indicate when the residents of Le Bray and surrounding constituencies can expect the commencement of the plywood factory that he has promised as part of government's plan to stimulate investment?
Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the government of Trinidad and Tobago recognizes Le Bray and environs as one of the depressed areas within the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, and has made commitments to the people of Le Bray and environs that on coming into office we will make every effort to ensure that we take steps to encourage into that district industries, one of which is a possible plywood industry. I can assure you that discussions are underway to see whether such an industry can be attracted to Trinidad and Tobago. And if it is attracted, the preferred area at this time would be in Le Bray. However, we have taken steps to bring about other kinds of industries in Le Bray, and in the very near future we will be able to advise this Parliament and the country as to what we have accomplished and not promised with respect to the people of Le Bray and environs.
Member for Princestown, supplemental.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Honourable Prime Minister. Prime Minister, in light of the recent protests in Le Bray regarding jobs, can you indicate to us some of the other industries that you speak of?
Any industry, whether it is based on hydrocarbon, supported purely by energy availability, agriculture or what, the area of Le Bray and environs would be open to receive any such industry. And insofar as we are in discussions with potential investors, those discussions will remain behind closed doors until they have been concretized. However, the Le Bray area has potential for attracting industry based on our resources, and we look forward to the time when we could upgrade the industrial infrastructure in Le Bray.
Member for Princestown again.
Honourable Prime Minister, you spoke about the potential of Le Bray attracting other industries. Do you have any specifics with regards to short-term measures that will be able to create employment in the Le Bray and surrounding areas in light of these protests?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Our short-term measures are based on encouraging the housing construction and agriculture at this time.
Honourable Member for Naparima, question number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Through you to the Prime Minister, could the Prime Minister indicate how much money has been borrowed to date from the 50 billion loan ceiling, which was approved by Parliament?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Given the fact that we are running out of cash as a result of the utilization of all that we had available, the raising of the ceiling by $50 billion to allow the Minister of Finance to access more money above the limit that existed at the time, the Ministry of Finance has to date borrowed $4.6 billion. In November, $1.5 billion was borrowed. In May 2016, $1.1 billion. In June 2016, $2 billion. For a total to date of the $50 million ceiling, we borrowed only $4.6 billion.
Supplemental, Naparima.
Could the Prime Minister indicate the projects on which these borrowed monies were spent?
Outlined by the Minister of Finance on numerous occasions, these borrowings are part of the consolidated fund. The monies go into the consolidated fund. Money is fungible. You don't identify which dollar bill was spent on which item. You fund the consolidated fund. And if you ask me, I would say really the hospitals, the schools, and your salaries.
Supplemental again. Go ahead, Honourable Member. Naparima.
Would the Prime Minister not say that it would be better to spend spend borrowed monies on investment possibilities rather than on consumption items, or recurrent expenditure?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm sure you understand that the consolidated fund in the budget funds the development program and the recurrent.
Honorable members, I am not going to tolerate extensive crosstalk. We have only started 14 minutes, and I continue to hear some chatter coming from the end of the sitting parliament. Honorable member for Princestown, I am speaking. I am not going to tolerate it. Please. Right? So continue, Honorable Prime Minister. The constant chatter.
I forgot the question. What are you asking again?
Better to spend the money on investment options rather than on a recurrent expenditure.
Yes, as I was saying to you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the consolidated fund, the budget allocation, has the development program and it has recurrent expenditure. It has public debt. When you aggregate into one pool of money, it is not as if you are not spending on the development program. We are spending on the development program that's underway now. And in other instances, you can borrow specifically for specific projects. That is not what is happening here. We are borrowing to cover a fiscal gap in a budget that has recurrent and development program. So there's no fear that we are spending money only on recurrent, because there are elements of development program spending in there.
Supplemental. Honorable Member for Tabukit, you got my eye.
Honorable Prime Minister, you indicated $4.6 billion was borrowed thus far, and you gave 3 tranches. The $2.5 billion that was drawn down from the HSF is not included in that. This is a 2.5 is additional to, well, not borrowed, but drawn down, additional to the 4.6, meaning that $7.1 billion has so far been accumulated by way of loans and the HSF for the government to meet its obligations.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the information that I have from the Ministry of Finance as of June 2016, that they've drawn down, they've borrowed $4.6 billion. Whether they borrow from the HSF or from Republic Bank or wherever, I don't know. And whether at this time, and I don't know whether the $2.5 billion the Minister of Finance spoke about, whether he has accessed all of that at this time. So that question is a little premature.
Honorable Member for Caroni East, you still have a question? Okay. All right. Question number 7, Naparima. Honorable Member.
6.
6, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and through you to the Prime Minister. Could the Prime Minister state the context of his proposed visit to Jamaica and the steps taken to give effect to the 2013 CCJ ruling in Shanique Myrie versus Barbados?
Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, for decades, Trinidad and Tobago enjoyed very, very cordial and brotherly relationship with Jamaica. As a matter of fact, I, in my formative years, spent part of it in Jamaica. Unfortunately for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, a Prime Minister in 2010 went to Jamaica and referred to our generosity to the Jamaicans during our period of better fortune in such a way that Jamaicans felt insulted. And since then, there has been a simmering resentment in some quarters to Trinidad and Tobago's arrogance about this question about Trinidad not being an ATM machine for Jamaica. At that time, members of the business community in Jamaica and others set about to organize a boycott of Trinidad and Tobago's goods. And as you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Jamaica is one of our largest markets for manufactured goods. And such a boycott would have damaged us irreparably. We did take steps to appease that sentiment in Jamaica, and we thought that it had gone away, but it simmered under the surface. And then recently, there were complaints in Jamaica about the treatment of some Jamaicans who arrived in Trinidad and Tobago and did not gain entry because our immigration felt that they didn't qualify to enter. That has reopened the sore of the ATM machine, and persons again started advocating that Trinidad and Tobago be punished by having our goods boycott in Jamaica. My visit to Jamaica is to better relations between Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica and to indicate our brotherly love.
Supplemental, Member for Naprima.
Mr. Prime Minister, is the real reason the fact that we have not implemented the rulings of the CCJ in respect to Shanique Myrie versus Barbados in terms of the orienting our immigration officers to treat our fellow CARICOM citizens in a brotherly manner?
Honorable Prime Minister.
Speaker, it is unfortunate that people in Trinidad and Tobago who should know better are advocating these things without information. The matter pertaining to Shanique Myrie ruling is engaging various officials at the Ministries of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. You see, and also the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, National Security, Trade and Industry. Trinidad and Tobago continues to abide by its obligations under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which established CARICOM and the single market and economy. So therefore, it is not correct to say that we are not carrying out any court ruling. That is not a correct statement. And coming from people in Trinidad and Tobago who should know better, if we are simply advancing other people's arguments to serve their purpose and possibly the intent, I don't want to ascribe ulterior motive.
Supplemental. Member for Naprima.
Would the Prime Minister agree that the immigration detention, the facilities at the immigration detention centers at which Jamaicans citizens are held are up to the required standards?
Honorable Member, in terms of the question, yes, in keeping with the original question, I'm not going to entertain that question, sir. In keeping with the particular. Honorable Naprima again, question number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and through you to the Prime Minister. Given substantial borrowings and yesterday we heard an imminent additional US $1 billion, could the Prime Minister clarify their collective implications for our debt to GDP ratio, our credit ratings, and interest rates paid on future borrowings? Thank you.
Sir?
I'm very happy that my colleagues on the other side are focusing on the debt to GDP ratio, which grew dramatically between 2010 and 2015. So now we're on the same page. Including the proposed $1 billion international bond issue, the debt to GDP ratio is estimated to be 53.2%. A credit rating attempts to give an indication of the risk level of the investing environment of a country and is used by investors when looking to invest in particular jurisdictions. In addition to projections for economic and financial risk, it also takes into account several factors, including political risk and country risk, or country-specific factors which could adversely affect a country's ability to repay the debt. As such, to isolate the impact of the proposed $1 billion US borrowing on the country's credit rating will not be possible at this time, given the vast array of consideration that goes into establishing a country's credit rating. The consideration in respect of the interest rates are similar in nature, given the fact that Trinidad and Tobago's interest rates are impacted by several factors, including US Treasury rates and the outlook for international commodity prices, as well as domestic liquidity in the case of domestic borrowings.
Prima, he caught my eye first.
Yeah. Would the Prime Minister tell us whether it is correct that when in September last year, the debt to GDP ratio was 46%, and I'm now hearing a figure of 53%. Does this mean that it has changed negatively in the last few months?
I know that my colleague from Naprima doesn't listen to us when we talk on this side, but had he been listening, Mr. Deputy Speaker, he would have heard the Minister of Finance saying daily, since he came into office as Minister of Finance, he has been regaled and presented with debt that was unknown to any of us, except those who incurred it. And insofar as increased debt has been coming onto the government's books, clearly, with the economy not growing as fast as the debt was coming, the ratio will change. So it has been changing, and in fact it's been changing on a daily or weekly or monthly basis? Daily basis. Because the millions and billions they spent during the election campaign that were not reported to the country, we are now finding them out one by one, $1 billion here and $1 billion there.
Sheet and now coming on.
Honorable Member for Caroni East. You okay? Honorable Member for Tabakit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the Prime Minister indicate, or whether you have the information, as to how much of the debt to GDP ratio between 2010 and 2015, or 2009 and 2015, was created as a result of the monies that had to be borrowed in the CLICO matter.
Honorable member, please, I would not entertain the question. And I have one more. Honorable member for Naparima. You caught my eye.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister has said that the change in the debt to GDP ratio has been as a result of the new debt that he says that he gets on a daily basis. If that is correct, would the Prime Minister agree that when we came into power in 2010, we were left with outstanding CLICO debts, HCU debts, and outstanding 83 wage negotiations? So that argument,
Honorable member, if you had not gone into the specifics of it and you have just said 2010, I would have been able to tolerate it. But with regard to the specifics and the examples, we will need to move on. Question number 8. Shogunas West. Honorable member Shogunas West.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Could the Prime Minister indicate the government's position at the OAS plenary session due to take place on June 23, 2016, which was called to discuss the threat to democracy in Venezuela?
Honorable Prime Minister.
A special meeting of the Permanent Council will be held on June 23, 2016, and that's the Permanent Council of the OAS, at which time the Permanent Council will receive a report from the OAS Secretary General on the situation in Venezuela. The meeting is being convened at the request of the OAS Secretary General in accordance with Article 20 of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, IADC. The Council will be called upon to make its decision by the majority of the votes, and there are 18 votes there, as to whether, and I quote, an unconstitutional alteration of the constitutional regime that seriously impairs the democratic order, unquote, exists in Venezuela. The Permanent Council could do one of three things. One, consider that there is no alteration. Two, consider that although it may exist, it is not sufficient as to seriously impair the democratic order. In this case, the procedure ends right there. Or thirdly, consider that there is such an alteration. Trinidad and Tobago has supported the reopening of an effective dialogue between the opposition and the government in order to find ways to encourage political stability, social development, and economic recovery. Most recently, via the special communique on Venezuela adopted by the ACS Summit on June 4, 2016, and the Declaration on the Situation in Venezuela approved by the Permanent Council of the OAS on June 1, 2016. Given that the Charter has been invoked by the Secretary General as opposed to an OAS member state, particularly one not linked to imperialism, the credibility of the entire process could be called into question. The ability of the Permanent Council to determine whether there has been an unconstitutional alteration of the constitutional regime that seriously impairs the democratic order is constrained by the fact that it will be making an assessment on the basis of a report to be tabled by a Secretary General, who with his previous intemperate and unsanctioned remarks can no longer serve as a force for peaceful dispute resolution in the Venezuelan context. More benefit might be derived from the efforts of former President Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero of Spain, Martin Torrijos
Honorable Prime
of
Minister,
Panama, and Leon Fernandez.
Your time has expired, sir. Supplemental? Shogunas West?
So, Prime Minister, I listened very closely to your statement thus far, but what will be Trinidad and Tobago's position at that plenary session?
Trinidad and Tobago's position is to stick and sail very close to the wind with respect to the founding principles of the OAS. And I just spelled them out there for you in 1, 2, and 3. What is available, and a report on the situation in Venezuela is to be presented. When that report is presented, The gathering, including Trinidad and Tobago, will determine whether any of these options apply. So at this stage, we have no other position but to recognize the duly elected government of Venezuela, whether it be the president or the Congress, and to not interfere in the business of Venezuela in a way that is inimical to their interests or runs counter to our principles in the OAS. Trinidad and Tobago, as Venezuela's closest neighbor in the Caribbean, we acknowledge that the choice of the government of Venezuela is for the people of Venezuela.
Supplemental, Chagonas West, Honorable
Thank
Member.
you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Was this matter raised when His Excellency President Maduro visited Trinidad and Tobago? Support from Trinidad and Tobago for Venezuela at the OAS.
Which matter?
Yeah, through you,
This
Mr. Deputy
meeting?
Speaker. Support for Venezuela, the Venezuelan government at the OAS at this special permanent council meeting.
This matter was never raised at any time in my contact with President Maduro.
Next question, question number 9, Chagonas West, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Could the Prime Minister state the policy and or operational measures that are in place to protect persons who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender in Trinidad and Tobago?
Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think he left out some people. Mr. Speaker, I want to make it abundantly clear that every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, regardless of who he or she may be, they have the protection of the written constitution in letter and spirit in Trinidad and Tobago. And in order to give effect to that protection of the Constitution, all the state's agencies, including the police, have a duty to protect every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, regardless of who they sleep with or don't sleep with or how they do it.
Supplemental, Chagonas West.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Would you be instituting a policy measure to change the law relating to buggery?
Proceed, Honorable Prime Minister. Question? Policy measures based on...
measures with a view to changing the laws relating to buggery, which affects this community.
Honorable Prime Minister.
The Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago gave a legislative agenda recently, a written agenda to this House, and I don't seem to recall that that item was on the list.
Honorable Member for Princestown.
Prime Minister, recently the chairman of the Equal Opportunities Commission indicated that she believed that there was need to include sexual orientation in the Act. Could you indicate what is the government's position on this?
I would not take your word that she said that, but I would not take your word for it because I don't think I can risk that, so I can't respond.
Okay. Question number 10. Question number 10. Member for Chagonas West.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Could the Prime Minister indicate when a statement would be made with regard to the renegotiated terms and conditions of the Mitsubishi plant project in light of the assurance given on March 18, 2016, that the government would report to the country when an agreement is reached?
Honorable Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Deputy Speaker and Honourable Member, a commitment was given here that we will report. What has happened is that the final dotting of I's and crossing of T's has taken a little longer than we expected. But I can report that we are very close to completion. And as soon as that completion is had, a statement would be made by the member and the minister and the office of the Prime Minister.
Supplemental?
Yeah. Prime Minister, has any of the progress on the project been affected by the renegotiation?
different things to different people. We would say that progress has only been made with the work that we have done so far. Otherwise, the project was dead in the water.
Prime Minister, was the physical work on the site in question, was it affected? That is to say, was it stopped, or did the physical work continue?
The physical works on the site continued, and that was part of the problem, because there were physical works to build a plant which had to use gas, for which there was no gas, and what was attempted to be contracted was a gas supply contract that would have scandalized this country.
Shut down other industries.
Honorable members, we have 1 more minute allocated for Prime Minister's questions. So are we to take question number 11? Honorable Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Could the Honorable Prime Minister advise this House as to how much of the $4.2 billion back pay owed to public sector workers has been paid, and when will the remaining sum be fully settled?
Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, 50% of the back pay will be paid in cash in fiscal 2016, which ends on September 30th. Options still to be determined to pay the balance owed in fiscal 2017 are still to be discussed. With respect to the cash payment, the sum of $309.2 million will be paid in June 2016. This represents the amount of the back pay audited or processed for payments and owed to officers in the police service, the prison, and the fire service. The balance of the 50% cash owed will be paid during the months of July and August 2016, provided that all the relevant pay sheets have been processed and audited in the requisite departments.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I know that the time is up, but I know it has been a practice and a convention of this House that the Prime Minister is given the opportunity to answer all the questions in the order paper.
Honorable members, there are 8 more questions. What are the views of the House? Or the wishes of the House? Could you put the question, Shogunas West?
That the House continues to deal with Prime Minister's question until the completion of the questions on the order paper.
All right, that's the wish of the House, honorable members? Yes. Okay, we'll continue. Go on to question number 12. Couva North, honorable member.
Thank you. Could the Prime Minister confirm if Coast Guard patrols along the western coast of Trinidad and Tobago has been implemented, and if so, is it a long-term measure?
Prime Minister.
The answer is yes.
Question number 13, honorable member for Couva North.
Could the Prime Minister identify the hotspot areas of central Trinidad where the joint Army-Police patrols have been deployed?
Member for Prime Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, at an earlier time in this House, my colleague from Couva North did make very spirited representation with respect to the presence of the Joint Army Patrol. And we did give a commitment that Army, Police, Joint Patrols will function wherever in the country the criminal element deserves such a response. I can tell you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Southern Main Road, 1st Street, 2nd Street, Immortal Street, Smith Street, Carlos Street, Juman Street, Southern Main Road, Edgar Street, Charlotte Street, Balize Avenue, Mary Street, Jennifer Street, Jane Street, Anissa Street, Cumberland Street. In fact, nearly all the streets. There's also Annabelle Street, Beatrice Street, Christine Street, Diane Street, Ellen Street, Macaw Street, Francis Street, Pelican Street, Kathleen Street, Grant Street, White Street, Lynch Lane, Lower Couva North, Noel Street, Sanford Street, Bongi Road, Junan Street, Tiloxing Street, Yallery Street, Macaulay Park, Southern Main Road. Nelson Street, Carly Bay Road, Cemetery Street, Copeland Street, Richmond Street, Perth Avenue, Orange Valley, Waterloo Road, Couva Main Road, Roselia Avenue, Cameron Street, John Baptist Road, Gregg Street, Garnissing Street, Manzi Street, William Street, Rowan Street, Campbell Street, Main Street, Cemetery Street, De Montbrun Street, Post Office Street, Mount Pleasant Road and Rivulet Road, Diamond Road, Mount Pleasant Road, Springvale Circular Road.
Yeah, go ahead. You are completed, sir?
You want some more streets?
Honorable Member for Princess Town, you had a comment?
That indicates very good coverage in central Trinidad.
Honorable Member Princess Town.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, to the Honorable Prime Minister. Prime Minister, you said progress means different things to different people. Are you prepared to stand by the Minister of National Security's position that the government's crime plan or lack thereof is yielding results?
Honorable Member, we'll move on. We'll move on, Honorable Member. Question number 14. Honorable Member for Urupuch West. Let's listen to the member, please.
Could the Prime Minister indicate what is the government's position on privacy rights on citizens in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago?
I want to give the member the assurance that all rights afforded any citizen of Trinidad and Tobago under the Constitution will be protected and preserved and respected by this government.
Supplemental.
Honorable Prime Minister, is it then I could safely infer that the rights are absolute and not qualified?
As said by Attorney General.
Prime Minister.
I have again, English is the language of the House. I have made no such statement, and I will be very offended if the member goes outside of this House and say I said that. There are very few things in life that are absolute. And with respect to even the entrenched matters in the Constitution, there are situations where provision is made to abridge some of those rights because the circumstances warrant it. So I am not to be quoted as talking about absolute rights.
Not a supplemental, member? Proceed.
So, Honorable Prime Minister, can you kindly perhaps tell this House what are some of the rights? That or not?
Honorable Member, please. Members, Honorable Prime Minister, please. Members, next question, please. Next question, number 15. Member for Caroni East.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, could the Honourable Prime Minister state what is the government's position regarding an amendment to Section 4 of the Income Tax Act to address the more accurate collection of revenue in Trinidad and Tobago?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have two answers. I'm going to give you the one for inside the House today, right? Because there's another one for outside. My colleague from Caroni East, the purpose of the Income Tax Act, Chapter 7501, is defined as an act.
Please. Stimulated by the papers. Second time in the sitting, and we are 2:13. Please.
And we have 4 doors in the chamber. Yeah, an act. Let me begin again. Some injury time. I crave your indulgence to start over. The purpose of the Income Tax Act, Chapter 7501, is defined as an act to impose a tax upon incomes and to regulate the collection thereof. The successful administration of the Income Tax Act is established on the assumption of voluntary compliance. Section 4 expressly states that, and I quote, "Every person having any official duty or being employed in the administration of this Act shall regard and deal with all documents, information, returns, assessment lists, and copies of such lists relating to the income or items of the income of any person as secret and confidential, and shall make and subscribe a declaration in the form prescribed to that effect before a magistrate." Incomes falling under this Act is detailed under Section 5 and includes income from any trade or business. The declaration of this income by taxpayers is inherent in the system and the security of knowing the information is kept confidential. In short, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that the current arrangements as spelled out here, where under the law, there's a confidentiality requirement where persons' income tax details are secret and confidential. In attempting to reach persons who may be hiding income from the BIR and other entities, those investigations are stymied and stalled against this clause, which says that we can't tell you, we can't help you, because we have to keep the confidence. Whether the money is stolen or underreported, it's a confidential matter. The government is considering an amendment to this act, and we hope, it's already drafted, I'm told, and we hope that when we bring it to this House, that our colleagues on the other side will support it so that investigations can be concluded in the manner that they should be.
Supplemental, Kearney East, member.
The Honorable Prime Minister indicate then what, in essence, you're considering as amendments to the Act, so we can have some knowledge of it before?
General's office is in consultation on this matter, and we'll indicate as soon as the draft is available for sharing with you.
Supplemental?
Notwithstanding what you said, but bearing in mind what the Honorable Minister of Finance had indicated in the budget presentation, to bring the Revenue Authority with the Board of Inland Revenue, to form a Revenue Authority. Is that part of the amendment that you're considering? And if so, when?
Honorable Member, I would not entertain the question. It's bordering on additional information. And let's go on to question number 16. Honorable Member for Point of Peer.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Could the Honorable Prime Minister state what measures and mechanisms will be implemented by the government to improve the collection of revenue from the energy sector and other business entities?
Honorable Prime Minister.
A number of measures are being considered. One, if there are outstanding assessments to be made on the energy industries where outstanding taxes have not been paid, those discussions are in fact taking place in some areas with some companies. Two, we are ensuring that we don't do what was done before, which is to commit to allow 100% write-off on capital expenditure in the energy sector. That currently prevails and would end in 2 years' time. We do not anticipate that that is an absolute requirement to encourage energy exploration in Trinidad and Tobago. We believe that there can be exploration, we can facilitate, but to ask for 100% write-off in 1 year is to undermine the revenue stream of Trinidad and Tobago. And we consider that development not to have been not to work very well for us. Secondly, we, in terms of collecting other taxes owed to the efficiencies with respect to staffing of the relevant department to ensure that those persons who are tardy in their tax compliances would be encouraged to change their attitude. And we will bring before this House the recommended way of increasing and improving our tax collection on an ongoing and sustainable basis. And that is the requirement to establish a single collection agency, a revenue authority. And we trust that on that occasion, when that comes to this House, our colleagues on the other side will see the wisdom and join us in instituting that to help collecting taxes in Trinidad and Tobago.
Member for Kearney East.
Bearing in mind the recent statements with respect to the weaknesses in the collection of the tax related to the amount of gas being used and gas supplied, where there are weaknesses in the system, would the Honorable Prime Minister indicate what he plans to do to going forward to help strengthen that area where there would be accuracy in the information with respect to the revenue to be derived from the gas situation?
We intend, this matter has attracted the attention of the Energy Committee of the Cabinet, and one of the things that we have to do, and we are beginning to do that, is to provide greater monitoring of the cargoes that leave Trinidad and Tobago for the international market, and to pay closer attention to what is required for the interests of Trinidad and Tobago. We are of the view that we have not been sufficiently mindful of the possibilities of inaccurate information reaching us with respect to our share of certain cargoes. And the Energy Committee is looking at that at the moment, and we also will ensure that we have available to us the adequate professional staff whose job it will be to ensure that we are not shortchanging these matters.
Supplemental again, Carinese.
Would the Honourable Prime Minister indicate if there is any consideration at all for renegotiation between the government and some of the major energy companies with regards to the amount of shipments that are permitted for the state in relation to the amount of shipments made by the major producers of the gas and the exporters of the gas?
Prime Minister.
We are always willing and ready to do negotiations if such negotiations have the potential to improve our position with respect to our corporate partners. Some of those discussions are taking place and have taken place and will continue to take place. And hopefully, where the negotiations allow for an outcome, we expect that they will be in our interest.
Number 17, member for Caroni Central.
Could the Honourable Prime Minister provide this House with the total cost of his recent 2-week visit to the United States, Ghana, and the United Kingdom?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the visit led by myself as Prime Minister to the United States, Washington and New York, Ghana and the United Kingdom during the period 3rd to the 12th of May 2016 was $1.871 million. This difference shows a savings of $180,000 as compared to a similar visit of an earlier time. The breakdown is as follows. Did you ask for the breakdown? But it compares very favorably, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It compares very favorably with the target year in an earlier time of $11 million. So we are well below what has been accustomed, because I can give you the assurance that we took only the bare bones of the staff and personnel required. We walked with no extras, no family members, no powder puff man, no handbag man, nothing like that. It was straight officers who were required for the business of the trip. And may I add that first class travel was afforded only to specific few officials for whom first class travel was approved and appropriate.
Question number 18, Honourable Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Honourable Prime Minister, given the recent reports of an increase in cybercrime, could the Prime Minister state whether his government intends to implement any immediate measures to treat with the increase in these offences?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In December 2012, a national cybersecurity strategy was approved by Cabinet.
2012.
That tax matter having jijui, you know. In March 2014, both pieces of legislation were introduced into the lower house of Parliament. Stakeholder issues affecting the passage of the bills. It was believed that particular clauses in the cybercrime bill were similar to clauses in the Children Act 2012. And further, the clauses in the cybercrime bill carried a higher penalty than those in the Children Act 2012. Members of the opposition, as well as the Trinidad and Tobago Publishers and Broadcasters Association, stated that certain clauses in the cybercrime bill infringe on the rights of and freedoms of press and freedom of speech. The ministry, in response, deleted subclauses 21.2 and 21.3, and the bill subsequently lapsed in 2014. There were some consultations later on, because in May 2015, both bills were once again introduced into the House. The cybercrime bill was reintroduced with the following changes from its predecessor. The offense of child pornography was removed. The offense of luring was retained. Part 5 of the bill, child offenders, was removed. Subclause 21.2 and 3 were removed. and new penalties for all crime, $1 million in 3 years and $2 million in 5 years, save and except offenses against critical infrastructure, which was increased from $2 million to $5 million, and computer-related forgery, which was increased from $20,000 to $1 million. Concerns were raised by members of parliament as well as various media groups in Trinidad and Tobago, stating that the cybercrime bill infringes on the freedom of the press. The following concerns were raised: illegal acquisition of data, unauthorized receiving of data, offense by body corporate. And before we could have taken any decision, the bill lapsed in June 2015. On Wednesday, June 15, 2016, consultation was held with the media associations based on the concerns raised by them. The outcome of that meeting, the media associations have undertaken to provide a response to the relevant clauses in the bill under query. And that's where the matter stands at the moment, actively being pursued.
Question number 9. Honourable Member for
Honourable
Shogunas West.
Prime Minister, you indicated that the bill has been actively engaged by the Office of the Attorney General. Is there a time frame when that matter will be brought before the Parliament?
Honourable Prime Minister.
The Attorney General has kindly advised that it will be within a month.
Question number 19. Honourable Member for Tabakit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honourable Prime Minister, given the recent reports regarding the possible non-payment of hundreds of millions of dollars outstanding contractors, could you please tell this House what impact, if any, this will have or is having on the construction industry?
The hundreds of millions of dollars owed to contractors have to be audited to ensure that we are paying millions of dollars for work done and contracts properly executed. That matter has attracted the attention of many agencies, and Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can tell you, the exercise of verifying what is owed by the state has turned up some very shocking actions on the part of public officials who have been fast and loose with public monies. Over and above that, however, whenever it has been determined that monies are well and duly owed to contractors and others, those monies are recognized by the state, and we do recognize that substantial sums are owed to contractors. And insofar as those sums have passed the muster, as I just mentioned, that they are due to be paid for goods and services provided, the Minister of Finance has been and continues to take steps to ensure that we can discharge those liabilities in a timely manner. We do know and we concede that because of the country's financial situation, we are having to be a little delinquent with respect to discharging our liabilities to contractors, but we want to give the contractors the assurance that with the recent progress made at the Ministry of Finance, much more positive responses are on the way.
Thank you for that answer, because there are a number of CPEP contractors who participated in the Health Sector Infrastructure Initiative. And a lot of them are owing suppliers a lot of money, and some of them are starting to lose their assets, like their cars, their houses, etc., and being taken to court. Could the Honourable Prime Minister see to it that if they have already been audited, could look into this matter to see how fast these contractors could be at least given some sort of relief?
Honourable Prime Minister.
I am not going to assume the responsibility of the Minister of Finance, but I would say, insofar as the verifications have shown that these monies are owed, I have every confidence that the Minister of Finance, within our straitened circumstances, will seek to bring relief to those who have qualified for those payments. But I must also say that in a plethora of areas, there was a whole landslide of improperly awarded contracts amounting to hundreds of millions of dollars, which require careful scrutiny before any public money is paid. And I trust that that doesn't apply to small contractors in CPEP. Because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it should be of concern to the public where there are contractors who could be telling the country that they are owed hundreds of millions of dollars from agencies that didn't have any money to pay them. because it raises immediately what kind of procurement processes were taking place, where agencies could have contracted the state in that way and now leave liabilities of hundreds of millions of dollars, meaning that contractors were bankrolling the country to that tune. We have to check and verify before we pay.
Honourable Member for Tabakit.
Mr. Prime Minister, are you aware that because contractors have not been paid, a number of important projects, bridges for example, in significant areas have actually been shut down and the projects closed because the contractors cannot finance the projects?
Honourable Prime Minister.
I am not aware of any specific project of that nature, but if that is the case, the work becomes part of the development program of the government going forward.
Urgent questions.
Honourable to the Attorney General, by the member for Princestown.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Honourable Attorney General, question 1.
Supposed to read it. Yes, read it.
Attorney General, the interpretation of the sections in the Children's Life Fund related to provision of critical and urgent care to children.
Honourable AG.
I'm pleased to say yes.
Okay.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Honourable Attorney General. Attorney General, could you indicate to us what mechanisms have been put in place by your office to ensure that a reoccurrence similar to this does not occur again?
There's no need for mechanisms, Mr. Deputy Speaker, mainly because the phenomenon is one which was unique to this particular situation. In fact, it's quite interesting to note that in the period 2010 to 2016, approximately 54 people were declined by the Children's Life Fund, and of them 30 people died. Correct. This is something which is certainly to be taken in the round, and therefore the attempt to sensationalize the life of a child in a circumstance where there have been 30 deaths in the period of the operation of this Children's Life Fund is rather unfortunate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And the Attorney General could answer yes or no to my question as well. Is he aware that Naveen Hariprasad died waiting on the interpretation from the Attorney General's office?
Mm-hmm.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Honourable AG.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am aware, quite tragically, that Naveen Hariprasad has indeed passed away. I'm not aware that it was on the advice of the Attorney General. I'm very pleased to say that the Children's Life Fund has in fact confirmed to me that there are 3 other cases that were in the mix in the workout of the legislation, that of Zaria Tull, Darius Frank, and Jaden Sylvester, and that all of these persons have been told that their applications have been approved. I have ensured personally that this has been done and taken that very extra step, even though this doesn't fall within my portfolio, to ensure that this is conducted in an appropriate fashion.
Honourable Member for Princestown, no more supplemental questions, sir. Question number 2 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs by the member for Princestown. You have the floor now, sir.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Honourable Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, question 2. Given the recent fluctuations in the price of oil, including today's decrease, could the Minister indicate whether she met with the Chief Executive Officer of Ghana Gas and whether this meeting is expected to result in any immediate relief of our current economic pressures?
Energy Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. George Saipa Yankee, Chief Executive Officer of Ghana National Gas Company, commonly called Ghana Gas, came to Trinidad on Thursday, the 9th of June, to attend the 2016 Reliability and Lubrication Engineering Conference held over the period June 8 to 10, which was held by the Society of Tribologists and Lubrications Engineers, Caribbean Region, in collaboration with the Society of Maintenance and Reliability Professionals, Caribbean Region. Mr. Yankee was invited to receive an award for his contribution to the development of the natural gas industry in Ghana. Given that he came in a private capacity, a meeting with the minister was neither required nor requested.
Supplemental, Honorable Member for Princestown.
So I take it, Honorable Minister, you did not meet with the CEO.
Honorable Minister.
As has been repeatedly stated by the Prime Minister during Prime Minister's question time, the language of this Parliament is English, and I was quite clear in my response.
Honorable Minister, Honorable Member for Princestown.
Honorable Minister, Honorable Minister, is it true that both yourself and the Honorable Prime Minister refused to meet with the CEO of Ghana Gas because they refused a proposal for a private-public partnership?
Honorable Member, are you talking from a point of fact?
Yes. Yes.
Proceed. Proceed.
Could the Honorable Minister indicate whether or not it is true that the Minister of Energy and the Prime Minister refused to meet with the CEO of Ghana Gas because the CEO of Ghana Gas refused to entertain an advancement of a proposal for public-private partnership? I will stop at that.
Mr. Speaker.
Let me respond.
Mr. Speaker, I crave your indulgence. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Prime Minister, please. Members, please. Minister of National Energy, the first part of the question, please. Proceed.
That is not true. It's not true. It's not true.
Right. Question. No. Honorable Prime Minister, on a point of order, sir. Question 3 to the Minister of National Security from the member of Oropuchis.
Let me just ensure this question here. Yes.
It's yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
It is your question.
It is my question.
Right.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, to the Minister of National Security, given the recent directive to the prison authorities by the Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General, could the Minister of National Security indicate when the locks at the Port of Spain prison will be changed?
Member for point 14.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, enhanced measures have been taken at the Port of Spain prison. I will not say when the lock will be changed in the interest of security of the prison officers and the prisons concerned. Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Member for Oropuchis.
Very much.
How many times?
Could the Minister indicate whether or not this process is in train to change locks as directed by the Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General?
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will not say whether it has been done or not. I said that measures have been taken to deal with security at the Port of Spain prison.
Sir, Oropuch.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, my final supplementary to the Minister of National Security. In light of the statement of the Honorable Prime Minister that we are losing the war against the criminal elements, do you see this as an indictment on your performance?
Yeah. Honorable, I would not entertain question. All right. Go ahead, Clip. Member for Faisabad.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Through you to the Minister of Education. In light of the fact that 189 students at the Rosilak Hindu School are now at home due to ongoing construction of their school, can the Minister indicate when the Rosilak Hindu School will be ready for occupation by the students?
Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Construction commenced on June 25th, 2013 for a new primary school, Rosilak Hindu, with a capacity for 240 students. Overall completion of the school building was 71% as of October 2015. The contractor has sent in a claim for review and approval for an additional floor. This matter is awaiting review and approval of the EFCL board. The contractor claimed that slow progress of work was attributed to the building of a school with 3 floors for the price of 2 floors. Students were previously accommodated at the community center until parents took the decision to keep them at home. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the estimated time for completion of this school building is dependent on the resolution of the contractor's claim for additional works. Once the contractor has been re-engaged, the remaining work is projected for completion in 6 months. Thank you.
Honourable member, please. Continue, honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Is the honourable minister aware that the decision to keep the children at home was based on a fire report that stated that the Rosila Community Centre was unfit?
Minister of Education.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm not aware of that report.
Okay, thank you. Let's proceed.
Questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to ask for a deferral of the following questions for 1 week. Questions 120, 121, 113, 145, and 131. And I'd like to ask for deferral for 2 weeks of questions 132 and 133. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to ask for deferral of written question number 101. In fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there are 37 questions on the order paper for today, and we are answering 34.
Question number 95. Member for Point Appear.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Question number question number 95 to the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this question requires the Minister of Finance to seek information from the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. The Central Bank is of the view that the Central Bank Act contains very strict confidentiality provisions, which the bank is obligated to comply with. The bank has indicated that Section 56 of its Act states that the bank shall preserve and aid in preserving secrecy with regard to all matters relating to the affairs of the bank. It is my intention, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to hold discussions with the Central Bank to see whether they can relax this provision and provide the required information, because I, Mr. Deputy Speaker, am of the view that this information should be made available, but I am bound by the position of the Central Bank because it has cited its governing legislation.
Honourable Member for Sipario.
Thank you very much. Through you, the Honourable Minister of Energy answered a similar question in another place. Yes. Energy. The Honourable Minister of Energy answered questions with respect to boards on which Mr. Jerry Brooks sits. NGC. I'm sorry.
Wrong question.
Legal fees, I withdraw. I thought you were dealing with the other one. Legal.
Any supplemental allowed?
Thank you.
Well, I don't know, FYE.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Could the supplemental to the Minister of Finance,
I'm sorry.
could the Minister of Finance be gracious enough to ask what sort of time frame he is looking at to seek information on this matter from the Central Bank?
Sure, Mr. Deputy Speaker. When I was on the other side, I had asked a question to the then Minister of Finance with respect to the number of persons employed at the Central Bank over a particular period of time under the tenure of the last government. And the Central Bank at that time cited the same confidentiality provision. I cannot give an exact time frame, but I can give honorable members of this House that I am of the view that certain information should not be withheld from the public of Trinidad and Tobago. So I will diligently hold discussions with the Central Bank to see where they will relax and withdraw from their posture with respect to this matter.
That's West.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the Honourable Minister of Finance of the view also that the allocations of foreign exchange or on an annual basis ought to be shared with the information ought to be shared with the public of Trinidad and Tobago?
Finance Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'd be happy to answer that question. The honourable member is mixing apples and oranges. The information related to foreign exchange is strictly prescribed by law and involves a breach of a specific provision in the Central Bank Act, the Financial Institutions Act. The question of legal fees paid by the Central Bank is not covered by any specific provision within the Central Bank Act, or staff numbers for that matter. So the Central Bank is relying on a general provision relating to secrecy. With respect to foreign exchange, that was a specific breach of a specific provision.
Very serious breach.
Member for Caroni East.
Would it not be under the Attorney General's ambit for all matters related to legal fees and in the ambit of the Ministry of Finance as well, money paid out of the consolidated fund, whether it's legal fees or ex fees, and all matters related to legal fees are under the ambit of the Attorney General. Therefore, the information should be available.
I will allow the question. Proceed, Minister of Finance.
Very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I will also be happy to answer that question. In the first instance, the money that the Central Bank uses to pay its expenses is derived from the interest charged on the overdraft at the Central Bank. It is not money from the consolidated fund per se. Secondly, well, you should know that. Secondly, attorneys hired by the Central Bank have nothing to do with the Office of the Attorney General. The Central Bank is an independent institution, hires its own attorneys, and it is not a matter for the Attorney General. Under the PNM. Under the PNM.
Question number 96. Honourable Member for Point of Pierre.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question number 96 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And in fact, although the Honourable Leader of the Opposition was a little confused, this question a similar question was asked in the other place. The state enterprises, inclusive of subsidiary companies, to which Mr. Jerry Brooks was appointed as either a chairman or a board member from September 8, 2015 to present are as follows. The National Gas Corporation, National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, of which he is the chairman, and he receives a monthly fee of $10,000 for that. The National Energy Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, of which he is the chairman, and receives a monthly fee of $10,000. Phoenix Park Gas Processors Limited, he is the chairman, receives a monthly fee of $10,000. Labre Industrial Development Company Limited, he's the chairman, receives a monthly fee of $6,500. NGC CNG Company, he's the chairman, he receives a fee of $6,500. NGC Pipeline Company, he's the chairman, he receives a fee of $6,500. Trinidad and Tobago NGL, he's the chairman and he receives a fee of $6,500. NGC Petrochemicals, he's the chairman and he receives a fee of $6,500. NGC Netherlands, he's a director for which he receives no fees. NGC ENP Investments of Netherlands, he's a director for which he receives no fees. NGC ENP Netherlands Cooperative, he's a director for which he receives no fees. The total for the NGC group of companies is $69,000 per month. Mr. Brooks is also a director of the National Enterprises Limited by virtue of his chairmanship of the NGC, for which he receives a fee of $4,000 a month. He's also a director of NEL Power Holding Limited by virtue of his directorship in NEL, for which he receives a monthly fee of $3,200. He was a director of National Helicopter Services, and he resigned from that company in April 2016, again as a result of his chairmanship of NGC. And he's also a director of Telecommunication Services of Trinidad and Tobago Limited as a representative of NEL on TSTT's board by virtue of the fact that NEL is managing the 49% of TSTT that belongs to Cable and Wireless that is to be disposed of, for which he receives a fee of $5,000. It is to be noted that on May 31st, the president of NGC advised that effective May 25th, although it has been the standard practice to pay travel allowances to chairmen of NGC and its subsidiaries, Mr. Brooks has requested that all payment of travel allowances be discontinued with immediate effect. May I also say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, by way of example, the former disgraced chairman of FCB under the People's Partnership received a total of board fees from the People's Partnership of $71,000 a month.
Next question. Question number. Come on, members. I don't remember for Siparia. You know what I mean? We need to move on, but go ahead, I'll give way.
Thank you very much, sir. Honourable Minister, you indicated the travel allowances were discontinued. Am I to understand you from May 31st? Would he have received any prior to that for his on the boards? Yeah,
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, obviously.
Proceed, member for Honourable Member for
Thank you. Through you, sir, Honourable Minister, would the person, would he have received any telephone allowances for any of these directorships?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this is the information available to me, that he is in receipt of board fees. He discontinued the receipt of travelling allowances. I am not familiar with any telephone allowances. And I wish to reiterate, this is a long-standing practice which this PNM government is reviewing, and I can tell you as of now that the policy of this government will be to apportion directorships on subsidiaries among members of the parent board, unlike the former PP administration.
Honourable Member for Oropuchis.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Chairman. I'm still trying to recover from that arithmetic. But is the Minister of Finance confirming as well, is he confirming that this excludes the provision of cellular phones, laptops, iPads given in the capacity as chairman? And is the Minister confirming that this is the highest paid political appointment in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, inclusive of prime ministers?
Sir, the first part of the question, feel free to answer.
Mr. Chairman, I think in order to re-educate, Mr. Deputy Chairman, in order to re-educate the honourable member, Ms. Nairi Alfonso, under the Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm answering the question.
Members, please, Minister of Finance, proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In answer to the supplemental about the highest paid, let me give an example of a highly paid person under the PP who received more for the subsidiaries of FCB than Mr. Brooks is receiving for the subsidiaries of NGC. Ms. Nairi Alfonso received $7,500 for FCB Holdings, $11,000 a month for FCB, $7,500 a month for First Citizens Investment Services.
Honourable members, please give the Minister of Finance the opportunity to answer the questions posed.
Answer them in silence, please.
Let's hear the question. Let's hear the answer, please. And I am also want to be in a position to hear. Proceed.
I wish to repeat, I am responding to the supplemental about whether this is the highest paid person. And I said, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the total of NGC fees is $69,000. I shall now go to another highly paid person under the PP to answer that supplemental. And can I do so in silence, please, Mr. Deputy Speaker?
Proceed.
You keep shouting, I don't know why. Nairi Alfonso, $7,500 for directorship on First Citizens Holdings, $11,000 for directorship on First Citizens Bank, $7,500 on First Citizens Investment Services, $7,500 for First Citizens Costa Rica, $7,500 for First Citizens Barbados, $7,500 for First Citizens Brokerage and Advisory, $7,500 for First Citizens Investment Services Barbados, $7,500 for First Citizens St. Lucia, $7,500 for First Citizens Financial Services St. Lucia, for a grand total of $71,000, which, as far as I know, is more than $69,000. So the highest paid appears to be this person under the People's Partnership.
Next. Member for point of view.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I seek some clarification to my question in B. When I filed the question, I filed it around May 13th. So the remuneration of Mr. Jerry Brooks, as far as allowances are concerned, I'm seeking to see clarification to ask if I can get that information as far as the remuneration allowances as at May, from September 8th to May 2016.
But that information was provided earlier.
No, not the allowances.
Minister of Finance?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, you were absolutely correct. I provided all of the information. And the question asks from September 8th to present. It does not say anything about the 18th of May. And I was very, very clear that at the present time, Mr. Brooks has discontinued the receipt of his travel allowances with the exception of one board. I therefore answer the question as you are absolutely correct, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Question number 100. Member for Princestown.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you, question 100 to the Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Maitai. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this question deals with the cerebral palsy program that we found in the unemployment relief program, and my reply is as follows. This unwholesome project appears to have begun in August 2011 when persons led by one Crystal Jones, who purported to represent the Cerebral Palsy Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and who further claimed to represent mothers, fathers, and caretakers of children afflicted by cerebral palsy, approached the Ministry of the People and Social Development under the stewardship of the then Minister, one Glenn Ramadar Singh. I'm advised that a decision was taken by the Ministry of the People and Social Development to employ these persons as area foremen in the unemployment relief program of the then Ministry of Works and Infrastructure. Employment contracts were issued to some of these persons, in which they were appointed as caregivers in the URP. In the event, they were hired as area foremen in the said URP. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in this arrangement, the representatives of the Cerebral Palsy Association of Trinidad and Tobago and the Cerebral Palsy Society of Trinidad and Tobago prepared and forwarded to the URP a list of names of persons who were to be paid on a fortnightly basis through the URP. The URP merely accepted these recommendations without more. In the event, the list forwarded began at approximately 166 persons. By the time of its discontinuance, records reveal that some 292 persons were so engaged and together were paid approximately $264,960 per fortnight. Records also reveal that in this ungainly arrangement, no cross-referencing, no investigation or verification was ever done to determine whether the claimants were all persons who had responsibility for children afflicted with cerebral palsy, or whether they were otherwise employed, or whether they enjoyed support from other available programs of the Ministry of the People and Social Development to the benefit of such persons. Many claimants produced no ID cards, addresses frequently changed, and even some of the children in whose names this ill-conceived program was intended to benefit had their names mysteriously changed from the same claimant over time, or had their names omitted altogether. Upon assumption of office as Minister of Works and Transport, and having responsibility for the URP, I reviewed this ungainly and unwholesome project, which revealed tremendous opportunity for mismanagement, graft, and abuse. For example, 142 such claimants were never submitted either by the Cerebral Palsy Association or the Cerebral Palsy Society of Trinidad and Tobago. These appear to have been included on the list by elements of the URP for no explicable reason or without any apparent justification. Mr. Deputy Speaker, investigations have so far revealed pro forma invoices for thousands of dollars worth of sewing machines, tools, and equipment that were supposed to have been issued to the claimants as part of the training component that was promised. This, of course, was never done, and the association has since advised this member that no equipment or tools were ever distributed to any of them. In the circumstances, the project was quite properly discontinued as at May 2016, and the bona fide parents of children who suffer with cerebral palsy have been directed to the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, where thorough assessments will be carried out and appropriate programs that will benefit such persons will be made available to them when they meet the relevant requirements. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Supplemental, Honourable Member for Princestown.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, through you to the Honourable Minister, after all that song and dance, could the Minister categorically say that there is no program with respect to cerebral palsy under the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services?
Yes.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I know nothing of song and dance. What I know here is that the facts as I have revealed them requires further investigation, and the member could be assured of that by the police.
Question number 104, member for Mayaru.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question number 104 to the Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank
Honourable
you very
Minister.
much. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the number of applicants on LSA's database, that is application forms received for the residential lots program, as of April 25th, 2016, is 56,075. LSA statistics by geographical region are as follows. Arima, 3,826 applications received. Chaguanas, 5,414. Kuva Tabaki Talparo, 7,627. Diego Martin, 1,781. Pinal Debe, 2,331. Point Fortin, 1,315. Port of Spain, 2,119. Princess Town, 5,090. Rio Claro, Mayaro, 1,317. San Fernando, 6,005. San Juan Laventil, 5,486. Sangre Grande, 2,928. Siparia, 1,567. Tunapuna Piarco, 8,403. Tobago, 26. Miscellaneous, 840. Giving a total of 56,075. In answer to Part B of the question, Mr. Deputy Speaker, no interviews were conducted between the period September 2015 to February 2016. Interviews are generally based or have been generally based on random draws, and there were none in this period due to an ongoing process of policy review with respect to this program. The third and last random draw of lots was conducted on July 1st, 2015, and the majority of the 300 selected persons were interviewed before September 2015. C. No lots were fully developed during the period September 2015 to January 2016. As development works are continuing, it is interesting to note, however, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that notwithstanding the fact that there are over 56,000 applicants for this program from every geographic area in Trinidad and Tobago, over 98% of the lands developed or under development prior to September 2015 occurred only in UNC-controlled constituencies.
How much? Repeat that. 100%.
98% of all the lands developed or under development prior to September 2015 occurred only in UNC-controlled constituencies. In answer to Part D of the question, no lots in this program are earmarked for distribution prior to the review of this and associated housing and settlement programs. In answer to Part E, there are 20 sites with a total acreage of approximately 472 acres under development at this time. Again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would like to emphasize the point that of the 20 sites under development, 19 were planned in what was at the time UNC-controlled areas.
What? Shame.
In answer, 19 out of 20. In answer to Part F of the question, no date has been set for any further random draws, as the policy framework associated with this program is currently under review. Upon completion of that policy review, so as to ensure coherence, equity, transparency, and efficient targeting in the execution of the government's public housing and land settlement programs going forward, random draws may be restarted. In any case, there will be no random draws until lots are prepared and have the necessary statutory approvals for distribution. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Member for Kumutu Manzilina, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. To the Honourable Minister, a supplemental question. In light of the fact that the LSA will be doing a policy review, will that impact negatively on the persons who have been successful with previous draws and who have not been allotted any parcel of land as yet? Will they be affected as a result of this new policy review? Thank you.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm not exactly sure what that question is attempting to ask, but the law is very clear. There was a cutoff date of the year 2000, but what is being reviewed is the policy in terms of how the applications are processed and how people access the land.
And the gross inequity.
Honourable Member for Urpuchis.
Thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Chairman, to the Honourable Member answering the question on behalf of the Honourable Minister of Housing and Urban Development, is the Honourable Member aware that the sites chosen to develop the Land for the Landless program was selected earlier by a former PNM administration?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, as usual with members opposite, that is totally incorrect.
Member for Tabakit.
Mr. Speaker, given the pains that the Honourable Member for Aruka Maloney took to indicate that the 98%, as she said, of development took place in UNC-controlled constituencies, by any stretch of the imagination, is the Honourable Minister indicating or suggesting that there will be future discrimination in the policies of the government against UNC areas?
Mr. Deputy, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The member for Tabakit is obviously admitting that there was discrimination. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to say that, God forbid, if they come back in office, I'm sure that kind of discrimination will resume.
Question number 115. Member for Caroni East, 115.
I wish to withdraw question 115 and 116.
Thank you. Question 117.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Question 117 to the Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
The clerk has identified that it can be withdrawn. Question 117. Member for Kumutu Manzilina.
She read it already.
Oh, you identified? Okay, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. To be eligible for the seed grant, applicants must be 1. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, 2. 18 years or older, 3. Unemployed persons whose household income falls below the poverty line with an interest in business and a business idea. 4. Employed persons whose household income falls below the poverty line. 5. Unemployed persons who have a desire to be trained in a specialized area for gainful employment. 6. Startup or potential business owners whose household income falls below the poverty line. Or 7. Existing micro-business owners whose household income falls below the poverty line. With respect to B, the turnaround time for processing applications should normally be 6 weeks. C, the amount of funds allocated for fiscal 2016 was $3.5 million. And D, the balance in the vote as at the end of April 2016 was $864,830.
Supplemental, Member for Kumutu Manzilina, proceed.
Thank you. Can the Honorable Minister state how many persons have accessed this grant from September 2015 to date, please? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, 148 applications have been received during that period.
Thank you. Question supplemental, last one, proceed.
Thank you. 148 were received. How many were in fact approved, and how much monies have been allocated for them?
Honorable Minister, are you in position to give that information now?
Not at this time, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Okay, so again, we'll have it in writing, Honorable Member. Question number 118. Oh, well, file accordingly, Honorable Member. Question 118. Member for Kumutu Manzilina.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Question 118 to the Minister of Public Utilities.
Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the program for the illumination of parks and recreation grounds provides for the lighting of parks, recreation grounds, and other public recreational areas which fall under the jurisdiction of the local authorities throughout Trinidad and Tobago. The process for the illumination of parks and recreational grounds is usually initiated by a written request from members of the public, including members of parliament, the denominational bodies, village councils, social, sporting, and cultural organizations, as well as individuals. Once received, a site visit is conducted by staff of the project unit of the Ministry of Public Utilities, and a request is made to the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, TNTEC, for a feasibility study. Projects are selected for implementation based on the feasibility report, the number of persons to be impacted, and the availability of funding. So, Deputy Speaker, as it pertains to the three grounds identified for the constituency of Kumutu Manzanilla, no requests were received for the elimination of 4 roads, Tamina and Clark Road grounds. With respect to the Sanatan ground, a request was received in June 2014. This ground is included on a list of recreational grounds currently being evaluated by TNTEC, a report of which is expected by the end of June 2016. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it should be noted, however, that in the Kumutu Manzanilla constituency, a total of 11 recreational grounds have been illuminated under the program as follows: Manzanilla Recreational Ground, Opeak Recreational Ground, La Tosca Recreational Ground, St. Louis Recreational Ground, Hausen Village Recreational Ground, Masjid Almu Menin Play Park, Upper Kumutu Recreational Ground, Bish Recreational Ground, Freedom Trace Recreational Ground, Coal Mine Recreational Ground, and Lower Kumutu Recreational Ground.
Thank you. Supplemental. Member for Kumutu Manzilina.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, Honorable Minister, I'm not too sure why is it you had to go through the listing that we have, but thank you. I just want to advise Minister that the 4 roads have been forwarded and Clark Road, and I was just wondering if it is that I highlighted the other grounds to indicate that we would not. Would you therefore be would there be a discrimination because of the number of grounds that has been electrified so far? I just want to make sure that it will not be discriminated against. It's a question.
Honorable Minister.
There will be no discrimination whatsoever. As I stated, it's a process that goes through, and once we receive the application, it will be processed and the grounds will be lit based on the availability of funds.
Question number 119, Member for Naprima.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question further. Could we? All right. Question 119 to the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs.
Honourable Minister of Foreign and Caribbean Affairs, proceed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. The position of International Relations Officer is a contract position for periods up to 3 years, with effect from dates of assumption of duty and terms and conditions of employment to be determined by the Chief Personnel Officer. It is not an establishment position. The government is currently examining the issue of contract employment in the public sector, which will assist in defining national policy with respect to the same in the public sector. The Ministry will be guided by the outcome of these deliberations and decisions. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Naparima.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Is the Minister aware that over 80% or so of the foreign service officers are on contract, and this does not augur well for the long-term development of the human resources of the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs?
Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, that awareness I do not share. I do not have it. By definition, foreign service officers cannot come under the rubric of the thrust of the gentleman's question. The representative from the member from Naparima. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Naparima.
The question was that IROs represent a significant proportion of the officers in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And do you think that having them for an extended period on a contract basis is consistent with the human resource development of your ministry?
Honourable Minister. Okay, members, Honourable Minister has the floor.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, that
Members on both sides, we need to hear the answer of the Honourable Minister. Kindly proceed, Honourable Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, that variation is not in harmony with the thrust of the question and is not linked in a way that I can respond. I'm able to today. Thank you.
Question number 122, Honourable Member for Shogunas East.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, question 122 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security, you are.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service records crime data by police station districts and not by constituency boundaries. A number of factors are considered in determining the need to establish an additional police station in a particular area. These include the conduct of a feasibility study, which assesses inter alia, 1, the volume of residential and commercial activities in the area, the proximity of the nearest or existing police station, the volume of reported crimes arising from the area. The enterprise area, located in the borough of Shogunas, is serviced by police officers attached to Shogunas Police Station and by the officers from the Central Division Operation Unit, which operates from the Longdonville Police Post. In the context of the crime situation and resource availability, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has deployed extensive resources to meet the demands of crime concerns in the enterprise area. According to statistics from Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the number of murders recorded in the enterprise area in 2015 was 14, and for 2016 to the end of May, 6 murders were recorded. Based on the available data, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service does not deem it necessary to establish a police station in the enterprise area at this time, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Next question, question number 123, Member for Shogunas East.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, question 123 to the Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's a rather unusual question, but I will answer it as follows. The House of Representatives Bill number 9 of 2014 was first read in the House of Representatives on the 4th of April 2014, and it lapsed on the 30th of July 2014. It was managed, piloted entirely by the then Minister of Housing and Urban Development, the member for Oropouche East, Dr. Rudal Munilal. No explanation whatsoever was provided at all by him or the then government for the failure to advance that bill. It just died in 2014. The present government is in fact reviewing the data and policy which should stand behind data, which may perhaps be related to that bill, the House of Representatives Bill number 9 of 2014.
Supplemental, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Can I ask whether you are keenly interested still in reviving this piece of legislation?
I thank the Honourable Member for the question through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Indeed, the issue of security of land tenure is a very significant one. It in fact correlates to an answer given by my learned colleague, the Leader of Government Business, in relation to the number of squatters and informal settlements in this country. It is something which has stood in the public domain to be answered for a very long time now, and we're pulling the statistical information so that an holistic policy can be provided and produced into legislation.
Honourable members, at this time, it is 3:25, and in accordance with Standing Order 2910, the remaining questions will be postponed to the next sitting, with the exceptions of questions 132 and 133, which were deferred for an additional 2 weeks. Let's kindly proceed.
Requests for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers. Personal explanations. Introduction of bills. The Miscellaneous Provisions Anti-Gang and Bail Bill 2016 in the name of the Attorney General.
Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that an act to amend the Bail Amendment Act 2000 I'm sorry. I beg to move that the next stage of this bill be taken at a later stage in the proceedings.
Members, the question is that the next stage of the Miscellaneous Provisions Anti-Gang and Bill 2016, be taken forthwith. All in favour say aye. Aye. All against? The ayes have it.
Relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister.
The Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Having regard to the fourth interim report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Whistleblowing Protection Bill 2015, I beg to move that the committee be allowed an extension of 13 weeks in order to complete its work and submit a final report by the 9th of September 2016.
Honourable members, the question is, be it resolved that the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider the report on the Whistleblower Protection Bill 2015 be allowed an extension of 13 weeks in order to complete its work and submit a final report by the 9th of September 2016. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it.
Public business, government business, bills, second reading.
The Attorney General.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that an act to amend the Bail Amendment Act 2008, the Miscellaneous Provisions Bail and Kidnapping Act 2011, the Anti-Gang Act 2011, the Bail Amendment Act 2011, the Bail Amendment Act 2014, and the Bail Amendment Act 2015 be read a second time. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the new standing orders of this House of Representatives permit me only 45 minutes to address a very significant bit of legislation before us. The bill before us has 10 short clauses, including the prescription for short title, that the Act is inconsistent with the Constitution, the requirement for commencement, and then there are a few short clauses dealing with amendments to a series of bills which one could categorize as bail legislation and the Anti-Gang Act. What the bill does in very short sense is to seek to extend the life of the successive amendments of the bail legislation in Trinidad and Tobago, to bring it forward from an expiry date of the 15th of August 2016 and to carry it forward 2 years. It seeks to do the same thing for the anti-gang legislation, which is also due to expire by way of the provision of a sunset clause contained in Section 15 of the Anti-Gang Act, by a further period of 2 years. The bill does one thing further. It seeks, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to cause what perhaps was a mistake to be remedied in relation specifically to another piece of legislation. That's the Miscellaneous Provisions Bail and Kidnapping Act number 2011, which was Act number 9 of 2011, where for some reason it was not harmonized to expire through the operation of a sunset clause on the 15th of August 2016. That's the simple version of what's before us today. The complicated version of what's before us today is a very different matter. There are, in fact, 6 pieces of law, 1 on the anti-gang, 5 on the bail amendment side, which we as a country have used in respect of the bail provisions from the period 1994 come forward to 2015, and in respect of the anti-gang legislation from the period 2011 come forward to 2015. We've used these 2 pieces of law in the arsenal of laws in Trinidad and Tobago to curb the criminality which affects our society. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's very important to note that our Constitution is abundantly clear that there is an enshrined series of rights contained in Section 4 and 5 of the Constitution. Those rights are specifically contained in 4A, that is the right to liberty and not to be deprived thereof except by due process of law. 4B, that is the right for the protection of law, essentially. 5.2a, which is the right not to be subjected to any arbitrary detention or imprisonment. 5.2e, which is the right for a fair hearing. 5.2f, Roman 3, which is the right to reasonable bail. Those are the enshrined rights that we're talking about. But we're talking about them in the context of Section 13 of the Constitution, which, as all lawyers certainly and members of Parliament would know, makes it a fact that there are no absolute rights in terms of enshrined rights, and that these laws are qualified by the operation of Section 13 of the Constitution in this particular instance, where we can intrude or abrogate upon rights in a balancing act, provided it is supported by a 3/5 majority of the Parliament in both houses, and also, and importantly, that it is proportionate insofar as a society such as Trinidad and Tobago, which has due respect and regard for democratic principles as we do, and for the rule of law, insofar as we deem these abrogations to be necessary in our society. Now, I've taken time to put it forward that way for a very specific reason. What we say here today in the House of Representatives and elsewhere if it gets to the Senate is going to be the subject of judicial scrutiny in the local courts and certainly at the Privy Council. Essentially because, and I wish to put members upon notice, there are 3 active attacks upon the constitutionality of the bail laws in Trinidad and Tobago, and specifically there is one that is in operation in respect of the construction of one of the amendments to the Bail Act, which was caused in 2015. The legislation is under consideration by the judiciary right now. Specifically, we have in Trinidad and Tobago the case of CV 2015-03229, Ryan Reno Mahabir versus the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, which was heard by Madam Justice Gobin, and in the course of which she gave amendment to the law by causing an amendment to a particular clause in the bail legislation in 2015, which caused an amendment. There is CV 2015-03475, Daniel St. Omer versus the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. And there is CV 2016-0074, Justin Stuart Charles versus the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. Further, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we also have another case, and that is of Brendan Taylor, which has been stayed pending the outcome of the decisions in Daniel St. Omer case and Justin Stuart Charles case. In these cases which bring frontal attack, one on a construction basis for the 2015 amendments to the Bail Act, and three of them on a frontal attack on the constitutionality of the bail law in itself, as it exists right now, and in particular as it relates to amendments to the law in the period 2011 to 2015. There is a frontal attack on the constitutionality of these laws brought by none other a person than Anand Ramlogan of Senior Counsel.
Who guided them in the parliament?
And one Gerald Ramdeen. And I picked out those two names because we're in a very unusual situation where a past Attorney General and someone who has been appointed from time to time as a senator by the United National Congress are bringing frontal attack to the laws which the UNC brought into life in the period 2011 to 2015, when specifically one can traverse the Hansard records beginning on the 10th of December 2010 straight through to the 31st of March 2015, ending in a contribution by a UNC senator, now Senator Wayne Sturge, another member of the UNC, when there are 14 references to the Hansard to be found in the Hansard, 14 contributions including Oropouche East, all of which go on to say that this society is in such a desperate state of criminality that, and I want to quote the words of Anand Ramlogan, the Constitution is not a grave or dead. We must use the very Constitution to give us a weapon in the fight against crime. That is why we invite members on the other side to support this measure without reservation. This criterion is met. There is just cause in this country to interfere with the fundamental human rights of those who wish to interfere and take it away altogether. There is compelling justification for this intervention to impose some restriction and limitation on the rights of those who wish to exploit others. We think that denying bail to gang members and persons charged with offences involving the use of a firearm ultimately strikes the right balance, and so that tenor continued for the period 2011, 2012, 13, 14, 15, and only changed when the then Attorney General stopped being the Attorney General. And I want to say that I find it particularly bothersome, distasteful, grips you in the stomach,
Are you proud of your profession?
causes a reflex that causes you to swallow what you would otherwise feel when you see something of this type, to watch people take the information that they had whilst they hold office, held office, high office, and take it into the courtroom of Trinidad and Tobago to set aside and damage Trinidad and Tobago in the fashion that they do now. And I've said some very strong words, Mr. Deputy Speaker, today, because I feel incensed over the position. And I'll tell you why.
As a fellow lawyer.
Leader of government business in the House, in the Senate, whilst I sat as an opposition senator, Senator Subhash Pandey, specifically said on the Tuesday, May 3rd, 2011, in relation to the sunset clauses which we now have before us, he said, during the 5 years, I am certain that this government will sit down, monitor, analyze this piece of legislation, and if there is necessity to have it extended, we shall come back to the Parliament and account to the Parliament how this legislation has been carried out. This government, he said, intends to be transparent, and as such, within 5 years, we shall come back and report to the Parliament as to the action taken under this Act, whether it was effective, whether we need to amend it, and whatever needs to be done. That was the government's commitment by the leader of the government's business on the Senate bench when we discussed the amendments to the anti-gang, when we did the Anti-Gang Act and the bail amendments which we're doing on May 3rd, 2011. Well, I can tell you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I came into the office of the Attorney General and as Minister of Legal Affairs. The population knows now that I am on a mission to bring statistics from Trinidad and Tobago into the public domain, be they in relation to the prisons, be they in relation to the criminal justice system, be they in relation to children, be they in relation to marriages. For the first time ever, the Office of the Attorney General is bringing raw statistics out to cause intelligent debate. But I can tell you one thing that I did not find when I went into the Office of the Attorney General. That is any form of statistical information, material analysis, or anything to do with the Anti-Gang Act or the bail amendment provisions. And I can tell you as a matter of fact that right now, we have one Court of Appeal matter, which in fact was filed today in the matter of the Attorney General as appellant versus Ryan Reno Mahabir as respondent, which is a case conducted by Anand Ramlogan. And there are 3 challenges to constitutionality, as I've told you. Frontal attack, 2 of these proceeding, 1 in reserve, 1 of them managed by Anand Ramlogan again. And in relation to the Anti-Gang Act, there's 1 Court of Appeal matter and 43 High Court matters. And in the context of the operationalization of the Anti-Gang Act, in the middle of a state of emergency put into effect, with nearly 7,000 people arrested and released out of the system under the anti-gang legislation, it's no wonder that the last government didn't have the courage to do the statistical analysis and appreciation to equip this Parliament with material which we should today be discussing so that we can have an informed perspective on what the law should be. And therefore, in the context of a frontal attack on constitutionality, in the context of a very real risk which we must avoid of causing legislation deemed to be ad hominem, meaning targeted to suit particular litigants. In the case of Ryan Reno Mahabir versus the Attorney General, if we cause amendments to the law, what we are going to have is the potential for the judicial exercise to be met with further complication. We also have, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the very important issue of managing what we as a country intend to put down on the Hansard record for a justification for constitutionality. And let me say why I say that. I've already pointed that there are Section 4 and 5 rights to be considered under the Constitution, and that the exception is to be found in Section 13. When one engages in an analysis as to what is proportionate within the meaning of the classic decisions, be they De Freitas, be they Northern Construction, be they whatever matters one may wish to come across as to the statements of proportionality, that the law goes only, that there's a legitimate aim, that the law is necessary and goes only insofar by way of intrusion as it must, that it is proportionate. When one considers all of these factors, it is important that Trinidad and Tobago have statistical information so that when a Privy Council inquires as to the status of this law and its constitutionality, that we have the justification on the record. So let me dive immediately to putting a statement on the record as to where we stand in Trinidad and Tobago on this issue of the savaging of our country and our society. And I do so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the extrinsic aid that the rule in Pepper and Hart will cause this parliamentary debate to be. Trinidad and Tobago, as we know, is proximate to South America. Our country has been deemed to be a transshipment point for the flow of narcotics, with the legacy issues of guns, ammunition, with trafficking in persons involved. Criminality has burgeoned over the last few years. As of 2014, according to information from the Commissioner of Police, 92 known gangs identified and operating in geographical divisions in the police service. There's an estimated gang membership of approximately 1,500 people as of 2014. Between 2011 to 2015, an average of 116 kilograms of cocaine has been seized per annum, with an average of 611 kilograms of marijuana seized per annum. The importation of illegal firearms, narcotics, are intertwined with criminal activity. And gang-related activity is what drives these enterprises. Firearms are used in the drug trade, obviously, and the commission of serious crimes, we will see by way of statistical reference, involves the use of firearms. In 2014, 35% of all murders were gang-related. In 2015, 33.6% of all murders were gang-related. As of April 30th, 2016, there have been 49 gang-related murders. For the period 2004 to 2015, the number of illegal firearms seized by the police has been increasing steadily. There's been an increase of over 500% in the period 2004 to 2015. In 2009, 71.4% of all murders were committed with firearms. In 2010, 75.3% of all murders were committed with firearms. In 2013, 78.4% of all murders committed with firearms. In 2014, 75.3% of all murders committed with firearms. A steady trend up from 71, 75, 78, 75% and counting. For the period January 1st to April 30th, 2016, a period of 4 months, there have already been 286 persons arrested and charged for possession of a firearm. These statistics, could the honourable members calm themselves? The statistics, Mr. Deputy Speaker, show increase and uptick in the seizure of firearms at ports, coastlines. But what I found quite interesting, type of firearms seized and found for the year 2004 to 2015 includes revolvers. The number in 2004 was 39. I'm continuing in the years up to 2015. Listen to the trend up. From 39, 74, 61, 98, 129, 102, 102, 124, 110, 109, 140, 160. 2004, 39. 2015, 160. The categorization goes pistols, 2004, 42. 2015, 329. The number jumps to. Continuously rising over the years. Shotguns, 10 in 2004 seized. We get up to 62 in 2015, going through peaks of up to 79, 80, 46. Homemade shotguns, similar trend. Rifles, from 0 in 2004 to 30. Trap guns, increasing. Flare guns, machine guns, 0 in 2004 to 23 in 2015.
And all these acts were enforced then?
Siparia, keep your cool. Total, 122 firearms for 2004. When we got up to 2015, 691, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Let's look to offenses committed with firearms for the period 2009 to 2015. 2009, and I want to go with percentages. If we look to the categories of murders, wounding, shooting, and robberies. Let's look at murders in the period 2009 to 2015. I'll give you an idea of some of the numbers and then translate to percentages. 2009 total committed, 507. Total with firearms for murders, 364. 2015, total murders committed, 420. Total with firearms, 340. But the percentages traveling through the years, 2009 to 2015, look like this. 71%, 75%, 71%, 76%, 78%, 75%, 80%. A steady trending up of murders committed with firearms. Wounding and shooting. The figures oscillate in the period 2009 to 2015, passing roughly 46 to 55%, and the figures staying constant. Robberies, same phenomenon. In 2009, 6,107 robberies committed, 1,872 with firearms. Total committed robberies in 2015, by way of example, 2,469, total with firearms, 608. But I heard the Honourable Member for Siparia say a short while ago, talk about 2016, talk about 2016, let's talk about it. When did we hear in Trinidad and Tobago about grenades? Right now in this country, grenades are the conversation. It's no surprise. Grenades are the conversation. Why? Because we have had unprotected borders in the period 2010 in particular to 2015, now into 2016, because of a decision to dismantle our security services and to leave our 360-degree border of water unprotected. And therefore, when one looks to the position of having an uptick in crime, one recognizes that crime and the effects of crime start somewhere. And it is obvious in our country that if you look to the phenomenon of grenades today, there's a legacy and history behind it. You know, I listen to members opposite often. Oropuch East in particular, residing in a realm of comedy which is inexplicable to me, laughing at the tragedy of Trinidad and Tobago in circumstances where there are tears and blood flowing on the streets, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, we look to this position now. Does the law and law such of this type...
The statistics are indeed very frightening, and as you're concerned, I know we are, and many others are, with the rise in crime. But would you provide us with some empirical data, statistics as you say? How many persons are in jail without bail as a result of these bail provisions?
Thank you. I thank the Honourable Member for Siparia, who as Prime Minister and head of the National Security Council failed to regale Trinidad and Tobago with one scrap of statistical information. I can say for a fact that in the prisons exercise which we have engaged in, we have come across 2,300 odd persons in the remand condition, that's pre-trial detention. And right now, I can tell you that we are disaggregating every single remand file across the cause of remand, the conditions in which they have been remanded, the types of offenses, and particularly, she's saying now you don't know. listen, members, settle down now. Let's get into a debate. Settle down. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we get to the statistical information, it is important to recognize that in dealing with the expiry of this law on the 15th of August 2015, as we now have upon us, the work which should have been done in the period 2011 to 2016 by the last government was not done. And therefore, in dealing with whether one should extend the sunset provisions by a further period of time, I have caused letters to go off to the Chief Justice, letters to go off to the Commissioner of Police, letters to go off to the Director of Public Prosecutions to pull the statistical information so that we can have an intelligent discussion as to how these laws are operating within the parameters of their application. We in fact also engage the opposition by way of direct correspondence and communication between the leader of government business and the leader of opposition business on the several days prior to today's sitting on their position in relation to this law. We invited them to have a discussion with us. We were told that the opposition needed to have consultation after their caucus information, and then lo and behold, we saw a letter from the leader of the opposition sent to the media first, us after, which has a position that says, I wish to hereby, I am advised that the government intends that the aforementioned bill be taken at all stages of the debate at the next sitting of the House, Friday, June 17, 2016, in recognition of the critical nature of the legislation in a fight against crime and the government's failure to engage the opposition in any consultation to date on this bill. I pause. I wonder if the gap between seat number 25 and seat number 26 is so large and wide a chasm that there could not have been consultation between the member for Chaguanas West and the member for Siparia when the email correspondence that passes between the leader of government business on this bench and the leader of opposition business on that bench puts a bold untruth to what the member for Siparia has put in the public domain, Mr. Deputy Speaker, about no consultation.
Absolutely.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 53, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, may I? Thank you very much. Pursuant to Standing Order 53, I beg to move that the debate on this bill be adjourned at this time in order to facilitate further discussions on this matter and to deal with a situation that seemed to have developed that is not, in fact, the situation that had taken place with regard to this bill. And as a consequence of this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to Friday, the 24th of June, which is Private Members' Day, and I'd ask the opposition to indicate what they'll be doing on that day.
They're on the beach.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I just merely want to correct the Attorney General, but perhaps I'd do that in the debate. Yes, I'd do that in the debate.
Honorable members, we are on the adjournment. We are on the adjournment.
The adjournment, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we will be dealing with the no confidence motion in the Attorney General. Private members.
Okay, honorable members. Before putting the question on the motion for the adjournment, honorable members, there are two matters that qualify to be raised on the motion for the adjournment of the House. For the adjournment of the House, filed by the members for Couva North and Chaguanas West. I will now call on the member for Couva North. Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The matter on the adjournment is, of course, to examine the failure by the THA to account for public funds coming out of the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the longest while, the THA has been in the public domain with respect to accounting to the public and to the people of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to how public funds have been spent over the years. It is no secret that the last Financial Auditor General's report was in 2007. And in light of this, from 2007 till present time, there has been no other Auditor General's report with respect to financial expenditures. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in 2012, the annual budget for the THA was 1.6 billion, around 1.6 billion. And of course, in 2016, we saw that the annual budgetary allocations...
Member for Siparia and Honorable Minister of Finance, please. Both members, but Honorable Member for Couva North is on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As I was reiterating, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in 2012, the annual budget for the THA was 1.6 billion. And in 2016, we see that the annual budget has increased to around 2.7 billion for the THA. This is, of course, a very significant increase in budgetary allocations, and therefore, in light of the absence of an Auditor General report from 2007 till present time, we find this highly acceptable on this side highly unacceptable to allow for this or for these expenditures to continue without any sort of documentation with respect to how these funds are spent. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I just want to refer to some figures over the past years that would have been given, and it's in the public domain, that would have been given to the Parliament, of course, and to the Ministry at that point in time, the Ministry of Finance, with respect to these monies and the expenditure of these monies. Mr. Deputy Speaker, with respect to tourism on the island of Tobago, between the years 2001 and 2015, $102,191,374 was spent on product development with respect to tourism. In addition to that, with respect to airlift to Tobago, between the years 2005 to 2015, over a period of 11 years, a total of $346,395,556 was spent on airlift in Tobago. Island promotion between the years 2005 to 2015 amounted to $151,635,123 was spent during this time. Destination marketing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, amounted to $5,233,136 within the last 6 months. Mr. Deputy Speaker, and why am I quoting these figures is because we had an opinion, or there is an opinion, from the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association with respect to how these monies were spent over the past years in terms of developing the tourism sector under, of course, the control of the THA. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in addition to that, there are some major projects under the THA at this point in time, and I make reference to the Manta Lodge at Speyside and the Sanctuary Villa Resort at Black Rock for a total of $32 million. However, $60 million is the projected amount to be spent before these properties can be opened to the public. Now, these properties will add 80 additional rooms to the island stock, but at that cost, Mr. Deputy Speaker, one wonders, and we are asking questions to the Minister of Finance with respect to these projects. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in addition to that, there have been certain financial commitments to various airlines with regard to attracting passengers to Tobago over the past years. From 2010 to 2011, $14,316,812 was spent. 2011 to 2012, $37,368,473 was spent on these financial commitments to the various airlines with respect to attracting passengers. 2012 to 2013, we had an expenditure of $57,895,849. 2013 to 2014, we had $60,250,402 spent. 2014 to 2015, $52,845,385 spent, giving an overall total of $222,676,921 spent over these years with respect to financial commitments to these foreign airlines. The direct and indirect payments to these airlines, Mr. Deputy Speaker, over the last fiscal years, of course, were arranged over this period of time. And we need to ask the question, did visitorship to the island increase because of these monies that were spent over the past 5 years? Have they increased? And I just want to quote from, well, not quote, but make reference to a submission from the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association where they stated that in 2005, Tobago had 88,200 international arrivals, but by 2015, that figure had dropped to 22,435 persons. However, in addition to that, we have seen a significant decline by 15% with respect to tourists coming in 2015-2016. However, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is very important to note that regionally, the tourism product has increased, and there has been an increase of visitors to the Caribbean region by 7%. So one needs to ask the question as to all of these allocations being given via the Ministry of Finance to the Tobago House of Assembly, whether or not it is value for money and money well spent in terms of developing the island of Tobago and its tourism product. These are the questions that need to be answered. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in addition to that, average hotel occupancy for 2015 in the region was 68.8% per night rate at a rate of US $299.44. Tobago only achieved 34% occupancy and a per night rate of US $154. So they have also complained that the customer service has suffered from a lack of available staff, poor training, loss of motivation to provide service, and the employment by the THA of some 70% of the workforce has further eroded any desire of young people to enter the hospitality industry or to work at all.
Honourable Member, you have 1 more minute.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So in my wrap-up, I just want to ask the Minister of Finance, and I know that he would be responding to me, as to whether or not we are going to continue to allocate such large sums of monies to the Tobago House of Assembly to allow for no development at all for that island of Tobago, and what is going to be done with respect to the allocation of monies to improve the tourism sector of Tobago, because we have heard our Prime Minister use the Tobago House of Assembly as a model and as golden in terms of the autonomy and how they run the island of Tobago. And I'm sure that there are many Tobagonians today who will disagree with the Prime Minister and disagree with the ruling government when it comes to national development of Tobago. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, upon listening to the contribution or the statement made by the Honourable Member for Couva North, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have to pause and consider very deeply as to whether, when the Honourable Member was a member of the previous government, whether she absorbed anything. She was in shock. Does the Honourable Member, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I did not say a word when the Honourable Member was speaking.
Kindly proceed, Honourable Member.
And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in all the years in Parliament of the Honourable Member, has the Honourable Member at any time read the standing orders, looked at May's parliamentary procedure, educated herself on parliamentary conventions? Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member is guilty of anticipation, of revealing confidential information that the Honourable Member would have learnt in a joint select committee proceedings, which is a serious breach of privilege, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And in addition to breaching the privileges of this House by revealing information that would have been obtained in a joint select committee meeting before the report of the committee is laid in the Parliament, in addition to that, the Honourable Member has demonstrated complete lack of understanding and knowledge of process and procedure in this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there's too much shouting. I don't know what's wrong with them.
Members, let's listen to, you had your opportunity. Members on the other side, so let's give the Honourable Minister the opportunity to make his presentation, please. Silence, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, there really needs to be training and education of members. Whether they've been here for 5 years or they've been here for 5 minutes, there needs to be training and education of members. Members of a joint select committee cannot use information that they have obtained by their membership of the committee to come and publicize matters before the report of the... Mr. Deputy Speaker, what is going on? No, Mr. Deputy Speaker, please. The member for Caroni East keeps shouting across the floor. I beg your protection, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Member for Caroni East, is it on a point of order, sir?
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Members, we have heard of the pending adjournment of the sitting, right? It's 4:12, and I am sure that most members would like to ensure that the adjournment takes place before 4:30, so that we would not have to break and come back again. So let's continue, please, members, in silence, so that the Minister of Finance can complete his presentation. You have the floor, member.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I simply ask that the Parliament engage of training of members of Parliament, so they will know what they can do and what they cannot do. And now let us move to the subject matter. The member for Couva North should also know that the entity that audits the accounts of the Tobago House of Assembly is the Auditor General, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The member should know that. The way the system works, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ministry of Finance, in accordance with the annual appropriation, releases funds to the Central Administrative Services in Tobago on a quarterly basis. The Central Administrative Services then prepares a check for the Tobago House of Assembly, and the check is then sent to the THA, which disperses funds to various divisions within the THA. The THA itself, like any other entity within the system, submits monthly financial statements of recurrent and development program expenditure and revenue to the budget division in the Ministry of Finance. With respect to the accounting for the expenditure, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is a well-known fact that it is the Auditor General's Department that examines the details and the records of revenue and expenditure, especially expenditure with respect to the Tobago House of Assembly. It is my information that financial statements of the Tobago House of Assembly to the end of December 2014, or fiscal 2014, have been submitted to the Auditor General's Department by the Tobago House of Assembly, and I am told that the Auditor General's Department is in the process of reviewing these submissions, which will find themselves in due course before the relevant Joint Select Committee of this House. In fact, I am told that less than 1 month ago, the Statutory Authorities Service Commission, JSC, a committee of this House, examined the Tobago House of Assembly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And the Honourable Member is a member, so the Honourable Member knows this. And the Honourable Member also knows that these constitutional committees, Section 66 committees, are empowered to look at accounts post facto and are empowered to look at issues contemporaneously, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So all of those issues that the Honourable Member spoke to with respect to tourism projects in Tobago will find their way into this House before the committee with respect to expenditure. At that time, the member can ask any question she desires with respect to the Manta Lodge and anything else that the Tobago House of Assembly is attending to, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I am just astonished that someone who has been in this Parliament for 6 years would have such a paucity of knowledge and such a poor understanding of procedures to not understand that it is the Auditor General that audits the accounts and it is the Joint Select Committee of Parliament that examines the expenditure of the Tobago House of Assembly. All I will say is whether the member for Couva North is coming here as a proxy to answer questions posed by others in Tobago is the same cocktail they will get in Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Member.
Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Member for Chaguanas West. Chaguanas West.
Members, craving your indulgence on
Standing order. A member for Couva North.
Just to indulge you, Mr. Speaker.
No, standing order. I need a standing order in order for us to proceed. It's a motion where no debate is involved, and I need to proceed to the next one.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. On a matter of clarity, I would just...
No member. Chaguanas West. Please. No standing order. Chaguanas West. Kindly proceed with your...
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think my colleague was trying to catch your eye with a view to making an apology.
Yes.
But anyway, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise on behalf of my constituents on a motion on the adjournment, which is entitled "The Failure of the Government to Meet and Treat with Hundreds of Occupiers of State Lands at Monroe Road, Cunupia." Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is a matter some 60 years in abeyance, and that the occupants of that area have lived for several decades, and there has been a history associated with these state lands. And on April 5th, 2016, they wrote the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, Clarence Rambarat, Senator the Honorable Clarence Rambarat. And I would read into the record this letter because it's important. April 5th, 2016. A special good day to you. We, the members of the Monroe Road Action Committee, write to you on behalf of 4,000 residents of Monroe Road Land Settlement Numbers 1 and 2. We request that you arrange an early meeting with us to discuss the following. 1. Preparation and issuance of residential commercial leases, already decided by a Cabinet Note number 2135 of August 20th, 2015 by the last government. 2. Regularization of state lands for recreational facilities, government institutions, and housing lots. These lands are situated south of the Monroe Road Recreation Ground. The government stands to benefit financially from the granting of these leases, as it would collect $3.50 per square foot or $17,500 a lot for the 30-year lease. Our residents eagerly await a quick resolution to this long-lasting issue. Thank you, Yunus Tahir Mohammed, President, Mumtaz Mohammed, Secretary, Hashim Mohammed, Teresa Akalu, Rajab Mohammed, Hiraman Jagannath, Harun Mohammed, Kishore Rup, P.K. Kangal, and Kaljam Ali. And they sent letters to Joyce, to the Permanent Secretary, to the Parliamentary Secretary, Senator Avinash Singh, and to the Acting Commissioner of State Lands. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there has been no response since April to this letter. So they came to my constituency and I told them I would raise it as a matter on the adjournment in order to bring some measure of understanding to the Honorable Minister of Agriculture as to what transpired over the years, and that the security of tenure of these persons are important. They have engaged in a struggle. This working group, headed by Mr. Tahir Mohammed, Yunus Tahir Mohammed, since 1998, they have been working on this. And there's a history, Mr. Deputy Speaker, so 1998 to 2016. So all you had to do was to acknowledge that letter. There has been no acknowledgement. And you by now you would have an appreciation that the state undertook to survey the acreage, that the state surveyed the acreage in working with the working committee, that as a result of the survey, that there was a subsequent cabinet note that provided for the pricing of the square footage, because these residents have been in occupation for over 60 years. And that therefore there is need to bring this matter to closure. So I am hoping that the Honorable Minister of Agriculture will acknowledge the letter, bring the community in for discussion, and he would not behave like his colleague in the Senate and do it alone. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is my hope as the Member of Parliament for Chaguanas West that this matter be resolved. The Monroe Road community is blossoming and there's a burgeoning commercial area. But this deals first with the residential plots, and it is my hope and desire that the Honourable Minister meet and treat with this working group that is now over 16 years in existence. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to respond to this motion. Let me assure my friend from Chaguanas West that this matter forms part of a very large problem in this country that I've spoken on numerous occasions about, and that is the failure of successive governments to deal with the issue of occupation, regularization, squatting, renewal of agricultural leases on state lands, and generally the breakdown of the system of administration relating to state lands. And this forms part of it. Let me correct him. This matter is 71 years old, not 60. In 1945, a decision was taken to convert these agricultural lands into residential and commercial lands, 1945. And after that decision, 58 years passed. And it was a PNM administration in 2003, on the urgings of the very same group that the member for Chaguanas West is speaking on behalf of. At their urgings, this matter was brought back on after 58 years. This is a block which was surveyed into 283 one-acre parcels and half-acre parcels in 1945. And in 2003, Cabinet agreed formally to a change of land use from agricultural to residential, commercial, and industrial. And after 2003, Mr. Deputy Speaker, another period of time elapsed The matter was taken up again in 2012. And I would say to the member for Chaguanas West, his administration did a fair amount of work to bring this matter to the position it is in now. And his motion talks about the failure of the government. There's been no failure on the last administration and this administration. There's been absolutely no failure. And I'll tell you what happened since 2012. In 2012, the Commissioner of State Lands initiated the process for the survey of these lands by writing to the Land Survey Board of Trinidad and Tobago, requesting quotations from licensed surveyors to do the surveys. In 2013, when the issue of funding the surveys, because in the normal course, these applicants would have had to pay for the surveys. And again, the last administration, through cabinet, agreed that the state would provide the funding in the sum of $3.5 million to conduct the surveys. And that was in 2013. And thereafter, the Commissioner of State Lands moved expeditiously, which is rare, to have these surveyors selected and to have the funding allocated. And the regularization was divided into 5 phases. The first phase, phase 1, the surveyor was garnished at, Ramcharita was appointed at a cost of $621,000. Second phase, LS Surveying Services, the cost of $621,000. Phase 3, Voltec Engineering and Surveying Services Limited, at a cost of $621,000. Phase 4, Survey Trinidad and Tobago Limited, at a cost of $540,442.50. And the fifth phase, Curtis A. Gokul, at a cost of $631,350. Mr. Deputy Speaker, out of these surveys, 283 plots have been created. In each case, the surveyors have been paid. And the present status in relation to each phase is as follows. In relation to the first phase, the plans are awaiting final approval from the Town and Country Planning Division. In the second phase, the general plan and the lot plans have been submitted for approval. In the third phase, the surveys have been completed and the plans have been submitted for approval. In the fourth phase, the final approval has been received on the general plan from Town and Country and from Director of Surveys, and we are waiting the approval from the Director of Surveys on the individual lot plans. And in phase 5, we are waiting Director of Surveys' final approval on the survey plans. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, more than it's not a failure. This matter, this particular matter, unlike the matters affecting farmers and state land users across the country, has proceeded with the pace and the direction that the member for Chaguanas West wishes. And let me assure him that this matter, under our watch, will be brought to conclusion having regard to the burdens placed on the Director of Town and Country, the Commissioner of State Lands, the Director of Surveys. This government intend, after 71 years, to fulfill the promise of 1945 to have these leases issued to those residents of Monroe Road. I thank you.
Honorable members, the question is that this House do now stand adjourned to the 24th of June 2016 at 1:30 p.m. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to the 24th of June, 2016 at 1:30 p.m.